Today, we're delighted to welcome Pam Langevin back to our group. She brings a wealth of valuable information on how to protect yourself while traveling and how to choose the right insurance coverage. Pam joined Medi-Quote in 2010 and is currently a senior broker specializing in travel and extended health insurance. Prior to joining Medi-Quote, she had a variety of customer service roles, including positions with Great-West Life and Iron Mountain, as well as supporting an independent insurance broker. She also brings more than 7 years of experience in property insurance. Welcome back, Pam. We're always looking forward to hearing from you and learning. And she has an assistant with her today. Welcome.
Thank you, Debbie. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here again. I haven't been here for a while, and I always like to start with a few funny slides because insurance can be very dry. And while I was doing my presentation, I remembered thinking that 10 years ago when I started these presentations, these were really funny. Now they're really too real. I'm very much crispy. And one of my biggest complaints is, you know, what used to take me 10 minutes to get out the door, I'm now spending 45 minutes because I'm not going to go into my issues, but I put on my shoes, then I have to sit and rest. And then I put on my jacket and I have to sit and rest.
Wait until it gets to be an hour and a half.
Ah, well, thank you for the bright spot of my day. And I thought this was funny because, you know, how many times do we lose our phones or, you know, I often think of how often teachers used to say, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket. And now we all do. So we're going to go through a few things. Debbie did a really good job of introducing myself, but I'll introduce myself again, as well as Medi-Quote. We'll review a few things that you might want to know when you've decided to travel. I'll give you a good overview of what travel insurance looks like, some do's and don'ts so that you know what not to do and what you should be doing, and how to avoid becoming one of those devastating news stories that we so often hear. And then, of course, I will give lots of time for questions. Up front here, we have some business cards and a few giveaways. So please, after the presentation, please feel free to come up and grab something. So as Debbie said, I joined Medi-Quote back in 2010. I absolutely love being an insurance broker with the travel side. Please don't ask me about property. That was a dark place in my life. I admire people who can have that knowledge. Medi-Quote has been in business since 1994, a very long time. We don't advertise. All of our advertisement is word of mouth and recommendations. Our goal is to provide individuals with an unbiased look at insurance. We are not commission salespeople, and what that means is when we're making a choice, we're making the choice best for you, not for us. We shop around through several insurance companies, again, to find you what coverage is going to work best for you and what's going to give you what you need while you're traveling. Recently, 2023, we joined a larger brokerage group called Navicourt, and it puts us in a position to have a much broader base as far as if you were, say, had somebody from Quebec. Medi-Quote doesn't have, anyone licensed in Quebec currently, but we do have a partner that does, so we could then refer you to them. It makes things very beneficial. When you decide to travel, there are a few things you should know. As residents of Manitoba, Manitoba Health asks us to contact them if we're going to be out of the province for 90 days in one trip. If you're gone for 90 days or more, you just have to let them know that you do plan on returning, because after 3 months, they can make the assumption that you've moved and suspend your benefits. Another hint I've heard is always keep a set of house keys or car keys in your carry-on bags so that if your bags are lost, you're not totally hooped. When you're going on a long trip, download those books or movies so that if you're in a delay situation, you don't need internet and you can still sort of relax and enjoy yourself. And this I thought was rather neat. When you're packing, instead of having his and hers, make sure there's one bag where it's commingled. And hopefully that's the bag that gets to your destination. Now, I researched some very strange laws out there. When you're traveling, you do have to follow the laws of the country that you're in. And I want to move to Samoa because forgetting your wife's birthday is illegal. Now, everyone has ailments of some kind. And I will say that a lung condition treated with prednisone or home oxygen is one of the hardest to insure when you're traveling. If you've attempted to find travel insurance and you're in that situation, I am sure you have run into roadblocks many times. Every insurance company has something called eligibility, and that's where it says if you can meet these 3 things, you are eligible to buy. Now, if you get past that, the next thing you need to meet is stability. Is your condition stable enough to be insured? Very often, policies will have an eligibility that says that you are not eligible for coverage if you have been prescribed or used home oxygen within the 12 months prior to departure or prior to application. So for anyone on home oxygen, they can't get this policy. But there is hope. As an example, one of our insurance company says you're not eligible if you're traveling against the advice of a physician. You're not eligible if you've been given a life expectancy of 12 months or less. You're not eligible if you require support with the activities of daily living. Are you eligible? So even if you're on home oxygen with this company, you can get coverage. There's a second one. So there's even more than one option. This one says to be eligible, you need to be Canadian. Again, your physician needs to okay your travel. No terminal condition, and no palliative care. So again, it means you are eligible for coverage and you'd be able to travel. Now, stability is where we head next, because this is the next important conversation. Pre-existing medical conditions are covered by your insurance policy as long as they meet the definition of stable by the insurance company. And that stability period will have a set number of days. So some policies will say you can't have any changes for 365 days before you travel. Pretty hard to meet. That's good for the young ones. Some will say 180 days, 6 months. Little harder to meet still, but possible. We also have policies that require you to be stable 90 days, 30 days, or even as little as 7 days prior to departure. Now, the shorter the stability period, the more expensive the policy is going to be, but it's pretty easy to say, I've had no changes in the 7 days before I go. I can leave on day 8 and still have coverage. Stable is very clearly defined in each policy, and each policy is different, but they are very similar. So in the number of days that you've chosen, you can't have a new diagnosis. You can't have started a new treatment or had a new treatment been prescribed or recommended. You can't have any changes to an existing treatment. And that includes an increase, decrease in dosage, stopping a medication or starting a new medication, even if they're similar and the change is only being done because it's a cheaper medication or it's similar, but there's more benefits to this one. The change isn't being made because your condition has changed, but it is still a change in the definition of the insurance company. You can't have displayed any new or more frequent or severe symptoms during that time period. You can't have been hospitalized or referred to a specialist. There hasn't been any test results showing any deterioration. And there's not any treatment that has been planned but hasn't taken place yet. So for example, that could be a knee replacement. If you're on the waiting list for a knee replacement, until that replacement is done, that knee is not stable and not covered. Some policies will also say that stability starts after the follow-up visit. So I've had my knee replacement surgery, everything's going well, and my follow-up with my surgeon is 6 weeks after surgery. I'm not stable until I've met that surgeon and had that discussion that I'm okay. And this is very important. Many people will say, but my doctor says I'm stable. Medically, you are stable, and that is fantastic news. But if you do not meet the definition of stable in the insurance company's contract, they don't care what the doctor says. So you have to meet their definition of stable. And what we do at Medi-Quote is we help you understand that definition in your specific policy. We ask you to tell us about your health. When did you change your last medication? Did you go to the hospital because you weren't feeling well? Let us know all of those dates. We'll use our wonderful computer calculator and we'll figure out how many days you're stable and whether or not you have coverage. Pre-existing conditions is any medical condition that has existed prior to your departure. So whether it's currently being treated or it happened in the past, it is still pre-existing. It doesn't mean it'll affect your policy all the time. It just means it was there in the past. So the more information we have, the better equipped we are to help you understand your policy. A lot of policies will have a minor ailment clause, which means if it's something that happened a month before departure, it needed a one-time prescription, ear infection, it's not going to be excluded from coverage because that's a minor ailment. They're okay with that type of thing. Some options that we can use that maybe other brokers can't are health and dental options. So we do have some health and dental policies that include travel coverage. And the beauty of those policies is you don't have to get through eligibility. You do still need to go through and be stable, but you don't have the questionnaire. A guaranteed issue health and dental plan simply means that there's no medical underwriting. They will cover your pre-existing conditions. And again, we do have guaranteed issue plans that are available for individuals. It's a monthly fee that you would pay to have that coverage in place and would include some travel that you'd be able to use. Now the do's and don'ts. Very important to remember is many policies have a requirement that you call the insurance company prior to seeking medical care. That, of course, is when it is possible. If it is truly life-threatening, call that ambulance, get off to the hospital. Just make sure you have your little wallet card with you so that the hospital can make that call on your behalf. If you don't call first and they deem that it was medically safe for you to wait to do so, they could limit your coverage. Don't leave your policy documents at home, and don't forget to put your wallet cards in your wallet. The wallet cards are very important because if you're ever incapacitated, hospitals especially outside of Canada, and even in Canada, if you're incapacitated, they're going to be looking for documents. They're going to be looking for ID. They're going to be looking for these health insurance cards. Are you covered? Who can they contact? So do keep that wallet card in your wallet with you at all times. Don't wait to call to make a claim until you get home, even if it is something little, because you don't know when something little is going to escalate. You know, well, I thought it was just a cold and now all of a sudden it's bronchitis or pneumonia. Oh, my toe was sore, but now it's escalated into there's something in the bones of your toe that are causing the pain, and it's not just a stubbed toe. If you have a deductible, call them anyway, because again, it could start off small and you might have to pay the bill, but if it escalates into something bigger, and now they're unaware and they haven't been keeping up with what's going on with your health. And wherever possible, refuse to pay that bill yourself. Do not pay it. You bought insurance. That's what the insurance is for, because the insurance company, first of all, will not pay that first invoice. They will negotiate, because if they can keep their costs down, they're going to keep your costs down when you have to buy your next policy. They also want to make sure that, you're paying a fair value. If that procedure isn't normally that high, they don't want you to pay that bill. They want to be able to say, no, that's not the right amount. These are some of the pitfalls that we hear about. A recent medical or news report, a BC woman faced medical costs of over $100,000 US. She had traveled to Florida, and before leaving, she confirmed that her employer's policy covered her while she traveled. But, she wasn't feeling too hot before she left, so she went to the doctor. The doctor did some blood work, but said, no, you're fine. Go ahead and travel. Well, she's not stable. She had medical tests. She didn't receive the results of those tests. She has no idea what's going on with her physical body. But she had no one to tell her. She traveled anyway, and while away, her symptoms got worse, and ultimately, she ended up being treated for ovarian cancer. Devastating diagnosis, made even worse by a bill of over $100,000. While on a cruise, a gentleman suffered a spontaneous gastrointestinal hemorrhage, which sounds absolutely horrible. He was taken off the cruise ship to a hospital and ended up in Croatia. His poor wife was using Google Translate and the kindness of strangers to communicate with staff. Finally, he was transported home for care, and he faced a denial as well. And his denial was based on the fact that his one question on the application that he answered was incorrect. So this is another one of the pitfalls that we find. Very often, you will have a question in front of you, and you have to understand that question in full. If the question says, have you ever been diagnosed with, received treatment for, taken medication, or been prescribed a medication for a heart or cardiovascular condition? A lot of people will sit and think, well, I don't have heart disease. I can say no. But wait, I have a heart murmur. While it's totally benign and will never affect me, it's a condition of my heart. It didn't ask about cardiovascular disease. It asked about a heart condition. So I have to say yes, because have I ever? Yes, I have. Another situation is very often people can have and I'm going to forget the medical term right now because we're being recorded, but it will be a hemorrhage in the eye or something with the vein in the eye, and it's actually termed medically a stroke or mini stroke. Now, if you're asked on a medical questionnaire if you've had a stroke or mini stroke and your doctor has called it a retinal occlusion, there it is, a retinal occlusion, you're not going to think of a mini stroke, but medically it is. How would you know that? You get the help of a broker. You get the help of somebody who's willing to look at those questions, go through them with you, go through your medical information. Now, we can't tell you how to answer a question. We're not allowed to. If I have somebody in front of me who's had a retinal vein occlusion and they get to the question about mini stroke and they hover over the no, I'm going to go, ooh, Sam, don't you remember that retinal occlusion you had? Insurance companies call that a TIA. Oh, so do I need to answer yes? I'm not telling you how to answer the question, Sam, but watch the head. Okay. So you want to be informed. You want to know the medical definition of any diagnosis. If your doctor runs a heart test, ask. So, do I have any irregular heartbeat that I need to know about? Did you find anything unusual? Don't go by memory. Keep a notebook. In 2024, my warranty ran out. I had a year that was full of medical situations, and I used our computer system at work to track my own medical history. And I kept thinking, how do people do this with a notebook? But keep a notebook, because it is very quick to lose track of, oh, when did I last take that medication? When did the doctor change my prescription? Oh yeah, I did have that procedure. What date was that again? You need the dates so that we can have the dates so that we know how, first of all, how you answer that question and whether or not you're stable. One wrong answer invalidates your coverage in full. So if you had an application form and it asked if you had in the last 2 years been treated or diagnosed with a diverticular disorder. Now, you had been diagnosed, but you forgot that it was a year and a half ago. That was like 3 years ago. But no, it was only a year and a half. Now you say no to that question. Well, you have made a material error on your application. Your contract is null and void. So when you fall and break your arm, you are not covered for any medical costs. They don't care that your answer has nothing to do with a broken arm. You misdeclared on your policy. You have purchased the wrong coverage. Work with someone who will help you with that. Work with someone who will help you understand your application form. Be 100% forthcoming. If you're talking to me, and I've had people say, I wish I hadn't told you about that. No. Whether or not you tell me doesn't change the end result. But if you tell me what's going on, I can explain to you what to expect. I can tell you, I am so sorry. Your doctor wants to run a MIBI test on your heart, but it's not going to take place for 3 months. Your heart's not covered. Wouldn't you rather know before you left and be able to make that educated choice than to get overseas somewhere and have a $100,000 bill? A little pill is never just a little pill. A small dosage is a small dosage. I'm on the lowest dose possible for blood pressure. I'm going to say this very kindly but bluntly. The insurance company doesn't care. The question is, do you take medication for blood pressure? Yes or no? They don't ask if it's a low dose or a high dose. It's a yes or no. You want to make sure that you understand, yes, if it's a low dose, that is great for you medically, but you still have to declare it if it's asked. Read your policy wordings. It is ultimately the buyer's responsibility to understand what that contract says. If you buy through Costco or through CAA or your travel agent, they're going to send you a copy of the policy wording and they're going to tell you to read it. They aren't going to explain what the exclusions are. They aren't going to explain what the benefits are. They're going to expect you to read that document and try to understand it. And I will tell you that is difficult because sometimes as a professional, and I've been doing this for over 15 years, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. There are times I go to the insurance company and say, hey, I don't understand this. Explain it to me. How do you treat this clause? I need to understand it. So if I'm asking, how are you supposed to know? Double check all of your documents, make sure your name is proper, make sure your departure date is correct, make sure your return date is correct. We do try to be perfect, but sometimes we miss because we're human beings. So as a team effort, between the two of us, we're going to make sure you're all covered up, but, do check. If you work with an independent broker, they aren't employed by the insurance company. They work for you. They are your advocate. If you work for an agent that works for the insurance company, their priority and their loyalty is to the insurance company themselves. Okay. So they're not going to assist you necessarily if you have a claim and a claim denial. When you have an independent broker, if you have a claim, you do work with the insurance company directly to get that claim paid. But if you run into any problems, an independent broker will allow you to contact, or should allow you to contact them and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. Now, sometimes we have to say, yeah, I know you've already been waiting 2 months. That is normal. I'm so sorry. I know it's frustrating. There's nothing we can do. But if you contact me and say, Pam, I have sent this form to this company 3 times by email. They keep losing it. Send it to me. I will send it to my rep. Tell him what's going on. Tell him to get his staff to get their heads out of their buttukuses and do it right. I can help. We have also been successful in helping to reverse denials when there's been a mistake. One gentleman I worked with, he was vacationing in Hawaii and he suffered a massive life-threatening heart attack. When he got home, he received a letter that said because they didn't call in advance, his claim of $80,000 for the air helicopter alone would not be covered. And he was devastated. And I asked him to take a deep breath. I understood why he was upset. He said, the insurance company has made a mistake. Give me a minute. Let's. So he came in, we sat down, we drafted a letter. Now the letter has to come from him. So I helped him draft the letter. And we politely explained to the insurance company that if they read the medical documentation thoroughly, they would see that in his particular case, there was no time. He needed to be medevaced before the nurse could even complete the transfer paperwork. She was literally throwing the paperwork into the air helicopter while he was being airlifted. Very quickly, he got an apology letter with the assurance that $80,000 would be covered. They're human beings. They have a stack of paper this big. Whoever was going through it didn't read closely enough. I felt really bad. He shouldn't have gone through that, but at least he had somebody to back him up and help him. Does anybody have any questions? Debbie will be right there.
Well, this is rather scary. Probably other people feel the same way. Do you have any data on what percentage of claims are denied versus paid? That would be the first part. But the second part is IPF is something that changes all the time. And if you're getting tested for your breathing every 6 months or every year, they're bound to be different numbers. That probably means you're unstable. What do you do about that?
The first part of the question, I do apologize because we don't deal with the claims. I don't have any statistics, but I will say that we have a love-hate relationship as Medi-Quote with our insurance companies. They love us because we sell lots and lots of products, and they hate us because we do our job very, very well. Do we have clients who have denied claims? Yes. We don't see all of them because we usually don't hear about them unless there's a problem. The second part of your question, yes, it is hard to meet the definition of stable, but remember, if I get you a policy that says you only need to be stable 7 days before you go, in that 7 days, as long as you don't have a test that shows your condition has gotten worse, in that 7 days, as long as you haven't changed any of your medications, stopped anything, started anything, adjusted a dosage, you haven't had to go to the hospital because you've had an episode that it was worse than any other time, by their definition, you are stable. Even a medical condition that is continually deteriorating can meet their definition of stable. So as long as we look at that timeline, a year would be too hard. 6 months would be too hard. Yeah, you'd want to look for something where it's 90 days, 30 days, or 7 days, depending on your situation.
I have a comment to that one. When I was working in the clinic, if a client came in with IPF and they said they would like to travel like soon, and we did all the testing, the breathing test, the 6-minute walk, all the other assessments. And, you know, like with the breathing test, it can go up and down a little bit from, you know, one time to the next. But if we felt that that was just a normal variability, and we also knew that they were traveling, and it was important to have on the chart that patient is stable at this time compared to the last visit, you know, that makes it also easier for the person if they have been indeed stable. So that's what we did if people were traveling, just so it was very defined.
Absolutely. And if you are planning to travel and you know your doctor has a timeline for tests, doctors have no problem if you say, hey, I don't want to change anything in this time frame because I'm going to try to travel. Can we run tests early enough so that if we need to make any adjustments, I do meet this definition of stable by the time I'm going?
Approximation on difference in cost between 1 year stable and 1 week stable? Just a ballpark.
It's a surcharge of 40%, okay? So if you're 1 year stable and the premium's $100, the 7-day stable is going to be 40% higher. Insurance companies base their price on your age, the length of time you're traveling. The longer you're away, the more expensive each day is. And that's because statistically, if you're gone for 3 days, the likelihood you'll need medical care is pretty low. If you're gone for 3 months, all of a sudden it's a little higher. And then of course, health. So once we have that all calculated and we do the stability, but yes, it is a surcharge of 40%.
Pam, when I think of travel insurance, I think out of country. Is there a need for travel insurance within Canada to any specific provinces that do not cover us here in Manitoba?
Very good question. When you travel within Canada, you are covered to the same value for medical care had that situation happened here at home. So let's say you're in Calgary skiing and you break your leg. If the Calgary Foothills Hospital charges $15,000 from beginning to end for that medical care, but Manitoba would have charged $10,000, you are responsible for the difference. Okay. Now, most medical costs are pretty close. The big thing to look at is if you travel to Quebec, they do not have a reciprocal billing arrangement, meaning Quebec wants you to pay up front, and when you get home to Manitoba, collect your refund. So it would always be a good idea to carry travel insurance so that you don't have to pay those bills up front. Now, there are 3 costs that are never covered when you travel to another province by Manitoba. You are never covered for land ambulance. That is on your own pocket. Air ambulance, which is the big one. That could be $16,000 to $20,000. And then repatriation, if you pass in another province being brought home. Those are costs that you have to take care of yourself. I will say that at Medi-Quote, we have access to what we call a Canada-only policy. You do have to meet some eligibility, which is really short. And they cover all pre-existing conditions regardless of stability while you're in Canada. And it is a very inexpensive product. I always say if you're traveling within Canada and you're not sure if you want to be insured, call us for a quote. Then you'll have the information. How much is it going to cost? If it's going to cost $50 and you're gone 3 weeks, that's a no-brainer. Now, if it's $500, I might want to think about that. But give us a call, get a quote, and then you can make your choice.
I have a question about oxygen.
Yes.
Many of us use oxygen, some of us just to travel. The first prescription I had was only when you're on a plane because the cabin pressure, 7,000, which is too much. And so are you saying, you talked about home oxygen.
Home oxygen is any oxygen that you require outside of a hospital setting.
Yeah, okay.
So even
Portable-
in that
portable.
situation,
And even if it's not canisters, it's the portable, taking it right out of the air, the concentrator.
even if you have sleep apnea and you have a sleep CPAP machine or I shouldn't say CPAP, BiPAP machine with an oxygen converter,
Yep.
that is home oxygen.
That, for some companies, disqualify you, or all companies.
No, some companies that will disqualify you.
Thank you. Okay.
Just out of curiosity, you mentioned the air ambulance could be $16,000 to $20,000. How does the payback work? Is it like you have to pay it back right away? Is there like payment plans for these costs that aren't covered, or do you have any knowledge about that?
That unfortunately I do not know. I'm going to assume that people just can't pull $20,000 out of their back pocket, and if they can, I should get to know them better. So I'm assuming that they would have some options, but then you would be looking at interest charges as well, I'm thinking. Again, if the policy's $20 because you're gone for a weekend, that's a no-brainer to me. Certainly worth looking into, but yeah, I would assume they have some sort of payment options available. I don't know.
So Pam, in Manitoba, we have to pay for our own ambulance anyway, so that doesn't change. In Manitoba, do we pay for air ambulance in the province?
I don't believe so if it's something that's medically necessary from hospital to hospital. I don't know if, you're, say, on a roadway and need to be medevaced, whether or not that's covered. I apologize. I don't have that information.
It is covered?
Stones. I had a brother that had a heart attack in Montana. Instead of doing a 4-way bypass, they sent an air ambulance to bring him back to Manitoba.
Yeah, but that's different.
Too costly.
Yeah, that's different than what we're talking about. We're talking about like if you have a car accident here and you have to be airlifted to the hospital. Okay. Well, maybe that's something we need to find out for the group. All right.
What if you have private insurance? They have their own travel insurance. They have never, ever questioned anything that my husband or myself has. What happens in a case like that?
So if you've retired and you have a package like that, and yes, the federal government has a
Excellent.
outstanding package.
Exactly.
They don't ask eligibility. You are correct. But is there stability in the background? I don't know because I don't have a copy of the policy. So that would be up to you to do your research. And again, it may not have a stability requirement. I recently read a package for a gentleman who had a retirement package, and he was going to be traveling, and he said, well, I don't think I need coverage. And I said, well, if you'd like me to look at it, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
And in the background of the policy, he was fully eligible, and it did cover pre-existing conditions unless they were being treated.
Because we've never had a policy from them.
Yeah, you'd have to find out where you could get a copy of the policy document itself. And even if you just that section, just say, hey, I'm just interested in the travel portion. And we're more than happy to review it for you. And again, because we're not commissioned, we're not here to make a sale. I've often had people in my office where I don't see anything wrong with your coverage. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
I don't have to bill you today.
I just know the last time my husband phoned, they said for travel insurance, we were both covered for almost $3 million each.
That's an excellent limit. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think there would be a time we would require more than that?
In the 15 years that I wouldn't travel with less than 2
Okay.
personally.
Right.
To me, that feels a bit safer. In the 15 years I've been doing this, I have heard of a claim for a single woman getting just over the $1 million mark. And that was a few years ago. So I'd feel comfortable 2 and up.
Right.
Insurance companies don't base their prices on your level of coverage. So whether you have 5 million or 10 million, or some policies out there say unlimited, it's not increasing your price to get the 10 million policy over the 5 million. What increases your price is your age, your health, and the length of time you're away. There have been times where I've recommended a $10 million policy because it was a lower price than the 5 million, just because of how they priced it.
They never even ask, like, what is it you have? Like,
They won't. It's what
They're
I
not even
called
interested.
a guaranteed issue.
Yeah.
It means they don't care because
No.
because their policy is a group situation where you've got, I'm just going to use 300 people. Out of those 300 people, you maybe have 290 that are perfectly healthy. And so you only have to worry about the remainder, right? So they don't ask those questions.
Okay.
So if you have access to that kind of plan, it is fantastic because you don't have to worry about the eligibility. You don't have to worry about that. The only thing is to find out pre-existing conditions clauses and their stability to make sure you qualify.
okay, thank you.
Just an update, Gary looked up air ambulance in Manitoba, and yes, it's covered. Land ambulance is not, but air is.
Land is covered, hospital to hospital though.
Yes, transfers are.
Yeah, I was going to comment on STARS as well. And the reason that there is no cost is because they're a non-profit charity. So they're funded through private donations, corporate donations, and some government funding.
Thank you for that. That's amazing information to have.
Thank you.
I have two questions. I did go to the UK last year and bought my insurance through Medi-Quote. And I was able to, you mentioned the 15 days. Are you still able to buy the extra? So I was gone for 21 days, so I bought the extra 6.
Absolutely. So what she's referencing is that there are many policies out there that you can buy. You can buy what's called a single trip policy where you buy it for that trip only. You can buy what we call a multi-trip annual plan. So if you know you're going to travel 2 or 3 times this year, get an annual plan and then that way you pay once and every trip after that is covered up to so many days. She has a 15-day plan. One of her trips was more than 15 days. So all you have to do is then, or if you have an existing work plan that has 15 days and you're going for 3 weeks instead of 2, you give us a call and we'll sell you the extra days that you need, and you only pay for the days that you're buying. You're not paying for the whole trip.
It was really helpful to have the whole year.
Yeah.
I had bought that plan. So my next question is, I think I'm going to go traveling again. Have the prices shot up a lot in the last year? Yes. Yeah.
We have found that there have been some very large increases industry-wide. My personal opinion is I think, everybody after COVID was kind of restrained and all of a sudden it's lifted. And everybody's gone back to normal and we're traveling again. And I think insurance companies went, okay, now we can get back to normal. And we have unfortunately seen some very large price increases this year.
Like how much?
Depends on the company. We are still going to shop around and get you the best possible option we can.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Now it's one question.
Okay.
Hello, question please. With my TD Visa first class travel card, does that do anything for me?
Some travel cards do. You'll have to contact your personal carrier and ask. And again, the questions to ask, how many days am I allowed? With a credit card, ask if you must book the full trip with that credit card for the coverage to apply, and what is their pre-existing clause. Those are the 3 important things to know about coverages.
I believe with the credit cards, they end at age 65 with the medical insurance.
Oh, great.
Yes. I'll get you in a second, this lady behind here first.
So if you buy a 14-day policy and on day 10, you get sick and you can't leave the country, outside of Canada, does your medical insurance continue after that?
Medical policies all have what we call an automatic extension clause. They, again, are all very similar. If you are medically unfit to travel, the insurance company will extend the policy up until you are able to travel. And then once you're able to travel, the typical policy will give you 72 hours to get home. If you're hospitalized, again, they'll extend right through the hospitalization till you're released and give you that extra time to get home. A lot of times that automatic extension also applies if you show up to the airport and your flight is delayed due to weather, mechanical failure, staffing issues. The insurance company, as long as you've done your due diligence and you've arrived on time to leave, they're not going to penalize you. This is beyond your control. Each policy is different. Some will even allow for private vehicles. If you have a mechanical failure or there's a road closure, they'll still extend the policy for private vehicles. But each policy is different.
I had an experience where the question was, have you had cancer, excluding basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma? I said to the agent, I've had melanoma. Oh, she says, that doesn't count. It's skin cancer. I said, no, it counts.
Thank you.
So I'm just emphasizing your point that the person you're dealing with doesn't always know the right answers, but we need to know the right answers with regard to our own health.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just wondering about non-prescription drugs for a medical issue. If you start taking a non-prescription drug for something.
All right, so that again is going to depend on what the issue is, and that's a very good question, and what the medical situation is. So currently, 81 milligram aspirin, the baby aspirin, that is used as a blood thinner, is considered treatment by most policies for any heart, stroke, or circulatory issues. So even though you can go to the counter and buy an 81 milligram aspirin, it is still considered treatment. Companies now with osteoporosis, if you are taking calcium and vitamin D3, those are treatments because although they're over the counter, they're required for your medical condition. So again, it would depend. If you've got anemia and you're taking an iron supplement, I'm going to err on the side of caution and say your doctor has recommended that, but we'd read the question, because some, they don't ask specifically about anemia, but if they did and they asked if it was being treated, I'd rather say yes and be wrong than say no and be wrong. Because if I say yes and I'm wrong, the insurance company is still going to cover me because I paid a premium higher than what I should have. And they're quite happy with that. But if I pay a premium that's lower than I should have, they're not going to cover me. So that would be my recommendation. So if it's specific to treating that condition, especially if it's doctor recommended, you might want to say yes.
Hi. Should we consider taking like your company over and above, like if we're covered by Blue Cross or, another company, in addition to just for the extra comfort?
If you're uncomfortable, in my mind, anything that allows you to go on that vacation, and pardon the pun, breathe easier, is well worth it. But if you were to say, bring me a copy of your documents, and you and I went through it, and I said, and we talked about your medical history, and I said, honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with your current coverage based on our conversation. I think you're covered fine. It's got the right limit. It's got a good stability for your specific situation. I'm comfortable with it. Then that's your choice. You can purchase an extra policy if you want, just to be safe.
Okay, like there's age limits, to like Blue Cross, for instance. They say that after 75, some people aren't eligible to travel outside of that.
Well, then you would have to buy another policy.
The additional, exactly, yeah. And even over 71, like myself, I worked for the city through Blue Cross, and we had a package, and they gave, us, well, they said it was a really good package, but do we know for sure?
And that's why if you get those, like I said, for any retirement package where it includes travel, get the pre-existing conditions clause and the limit. Make sure you have a good limit, because if it's only $100,000 in coverage, I'm sorry, that's not nearly enough. Yes, you want to buy a supplemental policy to that. But if you have a good limit and you have a good stability clause that fits your specific situation, then you wouldn't need to buy any extra.
Okay. Thank you for that.
This is more of a comment than a question, but last year, my husband and I were traveling to Montana to ski, and our Canada Life policy was very murky. We had traveled twice before. One time they told us we had $250,000 a day, and then one time they told us we had $250,000 for 40 days. And I couldn't find anything in the policy that really explained much. So I called you last year, and you helped me work through our pre-existing conditions, and we spent $500 on a policy for just 9 days in Montana. And at the time I thought, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money for 9 days. And when we got to Montana and started skiing, I was like, this is the best money I've ever spent. So it's more of a comment than a question, but I wanted to thank you, and I recommend Medi-Quote highly, because I talked to you and another fellow, and it was just so comforting in the long run, and money well spent.
That is so wonderful to hear. Thank you so much. I laughingly say my boss could fire me today. I'm still going to show up tomorrow. I love working for Medi-Quote because it is based on education. We're not salespeople. We aren't designed for, I could spend 45 minutes speaking with somebody and say, your coverage is fine. Nice to meet you. And then hope that if you ever need me in the future, you'll think that, we were ethical and you'll come back. And it's never a problem. So for us, and to do these presentations where we educate people on what to look for, because as much as those news stories are horrific to read for the average person, we hate them doubly as much, because we know it was preventable. It was preventable if there had been a proper conversation somewhere along the line so that they could understand their condition, they could understand what the question was, or understand their stability. So, and for me, holidays are not every year for me. And if I go on a holiday, when I get there, I want to be able to just sit back, relax, and not worry. And sometimes these group plans or companies where they don't have somebody that with credit cards will explain it to you word for word, being able to talk to somebody and say, what am I not covered for? Well, don't go bungee jumping. Don't go skydiving. Oh, don't dance on the floors, tables if you've been drinking. Make sure you dance on the floor because there's an alcohol exclusion. You're expected to find that all out on your own. Being able to know ahead of time what we shouldn't be doing is such a huge benefit.
So can you get a policy that covers you dancing on the tables?
No. We used to have one that had no intoxication exclusion, and then that changed.
What happens if you do it when you're sober?
Then you're okay. Basically, it comes down to unfortunate claims where individuals have been inebriated to the point where their judgment was obscured, and they've had some bad claims. So now insurance companies have simply said, some will state very specifically that you have to be over 0.08. Others will simply say your use or misuse of alcohol. So if you've had a glass of wine around the campfire, stand up and trip over a log and break your wrist, they could deny coverage if the attending physician marks intoxication.
Really?
Yes. It is really important to know the rules. And parasailing is not covered. There are some policies you're not covered if you sign a waiver to do an event, so zip lining. Their theory is if the person promoting the event is not willing to accept some responsibility or liability, why should we? So if you sign a waiver, you're not covered. Now, we do have a policy where you can get an activities rider thrown in, so if you're gonna do something exciting, exhilarating, terrifying, you can get coverage. But we have to know in advance.
Things are right.
Yeah, that's interesting because I never really thought about that. Parasailing and all those fun things that you do on a holiday.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's part of the fun, right? People want to go. Zip lining is a big one.
Right. Very
Not for me,
interesting.
thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the group?
I've posted our phone numbers and our email address and our website address. And as I said, I've got business cards up here and a couple of giveaways, so please help yourselves.
Pam, thank you so much. That was excellent. Every time you come, I learn so much more, and I do thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. It's been a pleasure, Debbie.